And we're live.
Hey,
Oh, hi
wel-
guys.
welcome everybody to the first episode of Beyond the Screen with Notorious DMG. What is Beyond the Screen? Well, it's we're us as GMs, DMs, lore masters, keepers, whatever you want to call it. We get together and we talk about things that affect us, matter to us, are issues for us, or we just want to shoot the shit. So this is the first episode. Tonight we have a few subjects. At first, we're going to start off with the post-mortem of Zweihander. What we started doing the channel with the very first game we ran is we sat down afterwards and we discussed the game and what we thought, and we rated it, and we talked about whether we would run it ourselves or if we'd play it ourselves again. So we're going to do that for Zweihander to start. We have 2 out of the 4 players here. After that, I need my agenda. We are going to talk about when a new game or system falls flat with the players. What does that look like? How do you do in that situation? Somebody here, doesn't have really fresh experience with that. DM self-esteem and players dropping out of ongoing games. Now, 2 of these subjects are from someone who's not here tonight, so we're just gonna have to go with it. But that's okay. But I am Matt with Zhaozam's Den. I am joined tonight by Chuck. Take it away.
Hey, I am Chuck with the Defenders of Cobalt. Currently, I'm the most bearded member on screen, so yeah, we'll leave it with that.
And last but not least, we have Bert.
I'm Bert. You can't see my luxurious growth of beard to rival Chuck's.
Ooh.
I am the host and primary GM of the podcast of Steam, Steel, and Murder.
Shots fired.
Yeah.
All right, fellas. Well, I was thinking also if what's this thing? If it ever picks up, if anybody ever joins us, they can ask us questions too. We can do some Q&A.
Yeah.
We can do it tonight if anybody joins us.
Absolutely.
But yeah, free form. But let's kick it off. Let's get right into it. We're running behind here. Let's start with Zweihander. So we did Zweihander. I ran the quest out of the back of the book for you guys, Bitter Harvest. It is my second time running it. I want to say third for some reason. Yeah, I had a good time. It played out way differently than the last folks I ran it for, which is good. I like that. And it accounts for the things you guys did. So let me start with you, Chuck, because I know how you feel about the game now. But why don't you talk to everybody about Zweihander? How did you like Zweihander as a player? Let's start with that.
Start with the basics. It was good, man. I really enjoyed the depth yet simplicity of character creation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
When you walked us through creating those characters, it was 10, 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
If you would have been setting on one-on-one walking someone through making a character, I mean, it was really quick. But with that, I gained so much information just in character creation that I had to go back and I kind of had to study it and think about it and then really use that information to draw the character out that I was going to play. And it was really fun to do. It's just there was so much there to work with. And going into it, I was a little concerned, what are we going to do with the game that is so don't get into combat. Combat, you will die.
Yeah.
Avoid. I'm like, this is going to be rough. I combat is a great way to move the game along. But then we didn't get into combat until the last session, and it was great. I did not miss combat. The social mechanics and the exploration of it was tied so well together, and it was a really well put together adventure too, and it was ran beautifully. So kudos there, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was really good. It was so good, in fact, that I am now the owner of 2 of the revised core rule books. I went out of my way to get one of those signed by Mr. Handsome Fox himself. And I really look forward to I've been hyping it up to my crew, and some of them have already started making characters. So
awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for the kind words.
Yeah.
Daniel has said if you want to get someone interested in Zweihander or kind of get them more towards wanting to play it, he says the best way to do it is make characters. And I could not agree more.
Absolutely.
It is unique. It's a unique experience. And you end up with a rather bizarre PC at the end of it. You're like, I'm going to play this.
I want to break in on that, actually, because I believe the whole crew did random character generations.
We did.
Yeah.
100% random.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely, and that's what I think was so great, is like it was so random, yet there was so much information, so much. It's not like, you know, like just coming off of Dungeon Crawl Classics where that was completely random, but there was no information you gained from it. You gained an occupation and some stats. This, like, you got physical characteristics. You got what you did. You got personality. You got, I mean, so much to work with off such a quick character generation. It was really great.
Right. Bert, how about yourself in the player's seat? I think
I really enjoyed it. I found it interesting that we interface with maybe 25% of the roles because we avoided combat so much, and our party, random as it was, we kind of got onto this idea that we were traveling group of minstrel with side party. And I felt no lack. The system worked really well with the social aspect to it. Again, with the random character generation, not only did it give you this, you know, spit out a random character, but it gave you pointers on how to really role play that character. Right. And that's not to say, for people listening, that you can't actually build a character that you want. You certainly can. We just all chose to do completely random methods.
The grim and perilous method, as it's called in the book.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is fun. Just kind of stretch your own repertoire of kind of characters you like to play. Every once in a while, it's great to just roll up something random and go for it, see what it turns out. And I think it handled it beautifully. I think it worked really well. I mean, there was so much that we didn't interface with. We had, I think, one spell was cast, sort of.
Yeah.
And one spell, and it was you who cast it.
It was me. I cast it. And in all honesty, like, I did cast the spell, but we really didn't get to touch the mechanics.
We didn't. And also I was kind of disappointed because magic, I love low magic games personally. Like, that's my own taste. So
yeah,
Zweihander's low magic, low fantasy, low magic, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you cast magic in this, it can be deadly. There's consequences.
Right.
Chuck's character that he rolled always critically succeeds when he casts a spell. I was like, what? How is this even fair in a game like this? How did you end up with that? Because I was building up like, oh, magic is dangerous. You don't want it. You don't want it, Chuck. You got a spellcaster. Look out.
Oh, and I was worried about it. Like, you had me worried about it. And then I went and I read, like, my little occupation. Veland is watching, commented. That's my buddy Jake, who is going to be playing that character when I run a Bitter Harvest here in a month.
Good luck, Jake.
But yeah, like, I was worried about casting. I'm like, I looked at the rules. I'm like, oh, I'm going to fucking die. Like, there's failures on casting a spell, and then seeing it like, oh, I get to critically succeed on every spell. I'm like, oh, that's why I can't hurt people, and that's why I only get one spell, because it's kind of
it's kind of unfair.
Yeah,
but cool.
Yeah,
cool. Like, the spellcaster in my group, he's a pyromancer, and if he fails on something like calling down fire from the sky, it automatically destroys the nearest town or village. Like, that is the critical failure. Like, he decimates it. I'm like, see, that's what I like. Like, there's stakes here. Like, there's lives on the line.
That is beautiful right there.
Right?
The system is solid. It can handle role play. It can handle combat. Interaction is wonderful with it. And I think this is a good... The author is spreading out and using the system in other things. I think what was in the news is that he acquired Colonial Gothic.
Colonial Gothic, yes.
Setting, using the Zweihander system. And I think this bodes well for that the system is very robust. It allows you to do many things. If you have granted, we didn't do a lot of combat. But I think if you
No.
had a party, and I think this was your first party, Matt, was more combat oriented than ours.
No, so they
They
actually
weren't
would have. They avoided all costs, and they had some combat based builds. They had one guy who's like pure combat, but they avoided it as much as they could. They would have completed a bitter harvest without combat if I hadn't forced them into it. So they were in a situation, you guys didn't get into it. They were watching a group of orcs on their way to Vorburg, the ones that were attacking the town. They encountered them, they got ahead of them, or they caught up to them, they encountered them, and they sat in the bushes and they sat there deliberating for, I want to say, 10 to 15 minutes of real time. And I was like, guys, what's going on here? And they just kept talking. I'm like, they see you. I started making rolls on screen. You can watch it. You can go back and watch session. I start making awareness rolls for them. And I'm like, they saw you. You've been there 15 minutes. They know you're there. So combat was forced in my game. Otherwise, they would have gotten away without doing combat at all, the way they played it. And it ended much differently than the way you guys ended it. Yeah, which is awesome. I love it. I love seeing how groups tackle the same mission or how they do it.
We were, before we started live here, talking about Shadowrun. I would think it would be interesting to see this system used in something like Shadowrun. High tech mixed with the fantasy, and see how that goes. I would love to see that. I think you could handle it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it could also. I really do. That's a really good observation. Huh. Somebody's got to do some work here. Daniel, new idea.
There you go.
So from again, I think Bert, you've run it, and Chuck, you've run out and bought 2 copies of the book. But now from the other side of the table, or the other side of the screen, as we beyond the screen, would you run it? I know the answer to this, but we'll ask for our audience.
Yes. Not only would I, will I. I'm really looking forward to it, and I think the party's going to have a lot of fun with it. It's a very large book, so sitting here like, all right, I got to learn the system. It's such a big book it's a little intimidating up front.
Yeah.
But it is, it's entertaining to read at least. So yeah, I will definitely be running it. I want to start putting together my own campaign and adventure for it, but it's like I need to get through Bitter Harvest to see exactly how the theme and the pacing sets, and then I'll be moving into my own content.
And if it lands with your group,
yeah,
we'll get to that.
We'll get there.
The size of the book, though, where you were saying that it was daunting because this thing is a tome. I mean, this is a 9mm stopper if someone shot a bullet into it. But I think that's a little deceptive, though, because it is an all-in-one. I mean, this would be players, GM, and monster manual in one book, and the page count would be similar. I mean, so if you look at it that way, it's really not.
You need to read the rules section for the players. You need to know the rules section for the GM. You need to understand how magic works. And you need to, any other little mechanics fall in there, but you don't need to know the monster manual back to back. You don't need to know the grimoire front to back. Yeah. You don't need to know all the professions front to back. And there's a lot of them in there, right? Like that takes up huge portions of the book. So yeah, Bert's 100% correct. You don't need to read it beginning to end to run this game.
Right.
You need to be smart and selective in what you learn when you're going to run it. And that's the nice thing also about Bitter Harvest. It was deliberately created to teach you as the GM and your players the system. Like it starts, I don't know if you've read it yet, and I don't want to give away too much here for your player, but it starts with a chase scene written in, or a race, right? Like it feeds you the mechanics as you run it. It's a very well-designed quest. Very, very well designed to ease you into the system because, again, it is intimidating. It's very intimidating.
But I would run it? Yes, absolutely. I'd actually had in mind, I was a fan, still am a fan, of 3rd edition Warhammer that got lambasted, but it had some great modules. And I had been kicking around the idea of running those using Zweihander, going through those 3rd edition modules.
Very good. Daniel loves 3rd edition. If you ask him, he'll tell you all day long that he loves 3rd edition. Also,
I think marketing was bad for it. Asking for that $100+ spend to get started on the game was a bit much for people at the time. And people thought that you had to use all the board gamey bits, all the fiddly bits. Absolutely don't. They actually released a GM's guide, a player's guide, and a monster manual, just like a traditional role-playing game. You didn't need to use all those extra bits, but when it was first marketed, they did it hard and heavy as it's a board game. Oh, it's a role-playing game. It's a bit of both. And that didn't work for people.
I think it's funny too, because the dice mechanic was introduced there that has now become like their signature system, FFG, exactly. Right?
That Star Wars came from that. That's the new, what's the new one called? The generic Genesis system. Yeah, it all originated with the Warhammer.
And people, I love that system. And people are like, oh, this system's amazing. But Warhammer, I think, was the first to use it. And it got just ripped apart and decimated for using that dice system.
Really?
So it's interesting, the evolution.
It's when it came out, I think people just weren't into it. I think the marketing was bad, but I'm glad that they learned something from it. They used that dice system to take it forward, streamline it. If you actually did an analysis of what the dice would do, it actually was quite broken, but they fixed that as each new revision of the system came out. Yeah. Actually, I remember I was part of the Kickstarter for the original version of Zweihander. Still have that book, wonderful book.
Jealous.
One of the goals that was talked about, but I don't believe it was ever done, is the author was going to try and incorporate using the 3rd edition dice in Zweihander, showing you a way to use it. But I think it became too complicated because, again, the math was not quite right how they had it. So I think it ended up being scrapped. But that was like one of the possible goals that they were going to work on at the time.
Right. That's interesting. I'm going to ask him about that now. See if they hit that goal.
I wonder how far he got into it before he's like, nope,
let's abandon this. This is not going to work. Not going to work. Interesting. So last time when we did 4E, we also rated it. Did we not? We rated it out of 10 or something like that? I don't know. I was on 3rd edition. I apologize. And I was really harsh on 3rd edition. What would you rate 3rd edition or 3rd edition? I rated a 4. What would you rate Zweihander out of 10, Chuck?
Out of 10
and everything. Yeah.
I have to rate it from a player's stance. I don't have enough knowledge to rate it from a GM stance. I would definitely put it up there, 7, 8, maybe hitting to that 9. Like cool. It was a good system. It was light enough. I really like the roll under aspect of the dice, and it's simple enough that the player knows if they fail or succeed without having the GM having to consult the GM, because it's
you always know your target. No, that's a good point. Also, actually, you always know that target number,
and that's nice as a player. And I think as a GM, once the players realize that, it'll be nice that they don't have to tell me a number.
Mm-hmm.
They can, and they can just say, I pass, I failed, I critically pass, I critically fail.
I was going to say the doubles. Don't forget about that.
Yeah. And I like that. And I'm hoping it's just another nice little thing that I think can help kind of streamline gameplay. So on the player front, just playing the game that you ran, I would rate it up there pretty high.
Awesome. Bert?
2 numbers, actually. If you look at this game for what else is out there that you can buy right now, okay, this has excellent marketing with what this new edition this came out with. Excellent price point, especially what you could have picked it up on delivery day. First day it was available on Amazon. Man, you could not beat that price for anything for a book this big and this complete.
Was $34? What you guys pay?
$35, 34 and some change. I mean, you could not beat that for a book this big. I mean, this is one-stop shop. I mean, everything you will need for years-long campaign right there. And for that, I would rate it a 9 solid for that. For people that have gamed before, understand what gaming is, and have played maybe D&D, maybe another system or two, coming to this, solid 9 for the value of what you get and what it brings to the table. Now, having played lots of games and having years of role-playing, I'm going to downrate it just a little. I'm going to say an 8. That's still up there for me. That's still a great number. And and most of that is just because the book is so focused on this particular grimdark, very Warhammer setting, right? If that was what I wanted, okay, maybe I'll give you the 9. But if I'm looking for a system that's going to bring something new to my table, bring something new to my GMing style, honestly, there's not a lot of groundbreaking stuff here. There's not a lot of stuff that I could not say I have not seen in other systems. But it is a nice, it flows well. Okay. All the different systems work well together, so it doesn't feel like a hodgepodge. It feels like it was well thought out. But there's nothing groundbreaking here. This is nothing, that's going to push my toolbox as a GM further than another game has. Okay, 8's still a solid game, though. 8 is really good. I can't even tell you. I don't have a 10. I've yet to see a game so perfect I would call it a 10.
That's a fair point. The elusive perfect game. Awesome. Yeah, and I love it. I've been running it since. It was the first game I ran on the channel, and I've built a bond with Daniel and the folks there, and I love the game. I'm running it in a few weeks at Gen Con. I'm gonna be the only person running it there. My thoughts and feelings about this fight.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. Are very, very clear. So no pressure. If anybody watching is going to be a player, there might be a few surprise drop-in visits from Daniel and Adam and the lead playtester, the boss, Mike, the Bossier.
There you go.
When we're playing, so be ready for that. If you're going to be a player at one of my games, they do plan on doing some surprise drop-ins. All right, so that is Zweihander. Let's get to our first topic. So let's go to the topic that's fresh to someone who's here, and not the other two that we'll work with. We can even wing it. Well, I'll say
there you
go
go.
to something else if need be. So the first topic is when a new game or system falls flat with its players after you've introduced it. So I'm going to throw it to you, Chuck. Yep. I know I'm the one who suggested it, but I did get the idea of observing what you've recently gone through.
Yeah. So the backstory on this is Dungeon Crawl Classics. I recently got into it, started reading the book, really kind of fell for like how kind of light the system seemed, how to kind of, gritty and fast. It seemed really great, and I was really, really excited. So I got my players together. Everyone made 4 level 0 characters, and I ran the adventure, the level 0 funnel. And in the game, for those that don't know, the way it works out is you don't start out as an adventurer. You start out as a peasant, a commoner, a level 0 character. All you have is an occupation and some shitty stats. You make a bunch of characters just for yourself, and then you and all the players go into this dungeon with your small army of characters, and you play through this dungeon, this funnel as they call it, with the idea being that hopefully by the time you finish the dungeon, the funnel, you'll have 1 surviving character left, and then that character can get their level and they can move on to the life of an adventurer. Right. So I ran the Portal Under the Stars. I ran it as I could for the party, and we didn't like it. It did not set well with people. Some people were complaining about how shitty the characters were. And like, that's fair. You're supposed to be shitty characters, but their argument was they were shitty enough that it wasn't fun to play. It stacked the deck too hard against them. And like, I understand that argument. And then, just the futility of the dungeon design. It was very much like we cut the stream off at the end of the night and we talked about it for a little bit, and they're just like, no, we didn't like it. They still want to try leveled play. So we hopped up to level 2 and we're going to try another adventure as written. But yeah, so that's where this topic comes from. I ran Dungeon Crawl Classics, a level 0 funnel, and my party said that was a hot pile of dookie.
And see, to me, that what you described sounds awesome, and I would love to play that.
Yeah,
Can we cross-examine the witness?
absolutely. Yes.
I was just gonna say, let's jump in now.
Yes.
In your player base, had anyone grown up with original Dungeons and Dragons? We're talking BX, we're talking BECME, Basic, Expert, etc. We're talking before first edition, or maybe even first edition.
No. Most of the core group of players, we started in 4th edition. So that
there is your problem.
Yes.
It absolutely is. It's a different mindset of gaming.
It is.
And if you read like the opening forays of Dungeon Crawl Classics, they're right up front with it. They're saying this is gaming from the 70s.
Yeah.
Where it's all about, your characters are scrubs. That means you got to think harder. You got to know how to approach a situation to give yourself the best bonus possible.
Yeah.
And if you're smart about it, you don't even need to roll because the GM's like, that's feasible, done.
Yeah.
And you have to think more than your stats.
Okay?
Yeah. And that it is a style of gaming that many people don't know.
I'll agree with you there. Like I started in 4th edition and reading through, and I'll give it to you there, Bert, listening to your basic edition podcasts is what really kind of it made Dungeon Crawl Classic sound so appealing. Is like, oh, it is definitely, it's a different school of thought. It's a different beast entirely. And I'm willing to put out there, maybe it was my fault that they didn't maybe I didn't do a good enough job.
I want to ask you about that. Yeah. I want to ask you about that. That's one of the things I want to ask. But I also want to jump in and I want to say here that none of us are saying one game is better than the other, and if you don't like it, then you don't know what you're. I just want to say it. There's games out there for everybody, because that's usually a big argument that people get into online, and we're not saying anything is better than this and that, and you can't play X because you play Y.
No, a game is as good as that table at that time.
Right.
I mean,
not every game's for everybody. So I just wanted to jump in there and say that. So before people get.
Yeah, like
you watch this and go, "Oh, you guys are saying."
No, absolutely not.
Not at all. Not at all.
No, we did not find DCC fun. That is something that is solely related to our table and how we played it. Definitely, yeah. We don't want to. I don't want to say it's a horrible game. It's not. There's so much in that game. Just reading it, that's just amazing. But it just didn't sit.
It didn't.
It's almost like you can correlate this to Call of Cthulhu, because you are nothing. You're a guy that spends a lot of time in a library against cosmic gods that could squash you by a thought. Your best bet in a Call of Cthulhu scenario is to take that 9mm retirement to your own face, because it's not going to end well. It's not. And from the get-go, when a Call of Cthulhu came, there is this sense of hopelessness. But when you're playing a game fantasy, it's what it is. It's a power trip fantasy. You're wanting to play something larger than life. You're wanting to play something that can stand toe to toe with the godless evils, right? And that's not what DCC is.
Right. So it's the games that I correct me if I'm wrong, that you guys used to playing and that you've come from is like hero porn, right?
Absolutely.
Like you are the hero. You are a god. You're a walking god. You can take on anything, right? And it is a very different game than that. And like, for example, Call of Cthulhu. I called Call of Cthulhu for years Old Men in Libraries, the role-playing game. Because that's what it was. It's kind of what
I will tell you, though, the sweet spot for a DCC funnel, what is the most joyous part of it is, one, the way that a 0-level character group wins is attrition. Each of your characters should be playing 4 characters. And you just pile on the monster. You get 16 0-level characters on a monster. Someone's going to roll that nat 20. Yeah. And you have baked into the scenario. And if you're running a canned scenario, this is true for all of them. There are refresh points where you can pick up new 0-level characters. They're usually enslaved. They're usually guards that will turn if you talk to them just right. But so along the way, you're getting your numbers back. and because there are parts where, as the adventure is written, you have to take out the monster to go further. Well, that's how you do it. You dogpile. You throw the 20 characters on top of it, and it's going to go down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
While playing it, if anyone has played Portal Under the Stars, there's a giant snake monster in one of the side rooms. And one player, it was really entertaining because one player that clicked with them at that moment. They're just like, I have 4 characters. It is impossible for all 4 of them to survive. So let's just go for it and hope that I only lose 1 and not 2 or 3.
Right.
So yeah, that's and
so the mentality clicked in for that person partway through.
Yeah, for definitely, it's like the one player I had that disliked it the most, I'll say, that mentality never clicked in, I think. They played through until the very last combat with all 4 characters. And I could tell by watching them as we played that they were bored because they were being so cautious. They weren't doing anything. They were letting everyone else go first. And it was definitely, it was a culture clash, I guess.
Yeah. It wasn't for them.
To be fair, the game does change after your funnel. I mean, once you hit first level, it is fairly traditional after that. It's actually hard to kill a character once they've reached like second level in DCC.
Really?
Because you have so many chances to come back. There's the mechanic of rolling over the dead. You know, like you can be cut down, absolutely killed in battle, but if your friends survive, they could just they can literally roll you over, smack you in the face, say, "You okay, bud?" "Yeah, I'm okay."
You mentioned that. I do remember reading that in the book. Yeah. I'll be we're playing level 2 this coming Friday in another adventure. And so far the people who've made their characters are just like, oh, wow, this is so different than that funnel. So
yeah, absolutely. I think the funnel there is to get out of the idea that your stats make your character. Honestly, I think what it is, because I've played 0 level funnels with so many groups, and people like to say, "Oh, this guy's got the best stats, so I'm gonna hang him back so he makes it." That's the absolute wrong mindset to use.
Yeah,
you come out of the funnel, you can get some gong farmer that makes it at the end that has like nothing in stats, but he's the one that lived.
right.
And by the time you do that, it's like this might have been the underdog, and so you now have a personality for him, which may not have existed at all while you were playing. But this scrub made it out when your 18 and 17 statted character died in the first level, you know?
Right.
And that at the beginning
develops the bond with the character, and then now you're invested. So the trick is to not become invested until you're done with the funnel.
Yeah.
That's a good way to point it, because once again, I'm thinking about the player who disliked it the most. He really kind of bonded with some of his characters. And then, of course, they died. And then the one who survived was like, I did not care about this person at all. So he was kind of mad about that. Veland is watching. Jake from My Game is commenting in the chat. My best guy tried to rappel down a hole like a special forces soldier, slipped and broke his neck. And his 2 remaining nobodies were A-okay. Yeah, absolutely. Jake has made me lose my train of thought. That's fine.
That's okay. I've had this recently happen as well. I didn't even think of it till we started the show. I was like, hey, wait a minute, this happened to me. I've been running Forbidden Lands on my channel since it came out in December. Semi-regularly for Friday Night Group, which Bert also plays in. And for the most part, like 3 of the 4 original players have stuck with it, and you guys have really enjoyed it. And I love the system. I really do. I'm enamored with the system and the game and the world and the mentality and the freedom behind it. I also ran it for another group who primarily only plays Dungeons and Dragons, which is fine. Again, nothing against if you play X game, you can't play Y game. But they were used to a different kind of game. But they saw how much fun I was having running it. They saw what other people are saying about the game. They wanted to give it a try. So I ran it for them. And a character ended up dying in the 2nd or 3rd session. And that was it. They were done. It wasn't a game for them. They didn't like that they died. Even though they said, Matt, we know you told us up front that this is deadly and we will lose our characters and have a backup. We get it. I just don't. I think it happened too soon. And I was like, oh, okay. Which is fine. And then it also came out that they felt that there was they had no direction, which I found very interesting. And again, it came from playing, I think, one type of game that they're used to going into a different type of game. Whereas Forbidden Lands, it is all about freedom. There is no script. Like, I'll drop in and inject a story. There is a storyline, but there is no clear path. There is no clear rails. There is nothing guiding you from A to B. You are creating a story as you go, and a lot of it is random rules. And that's the way the game's written. You can run it any other way you want, but we're running a vanilla of the book, and they didn't like that. And that spoke more to me than the death. I was like, okay, so you guys want a little bit of railroading. You want a little bit of hand-holding. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the kind of game you want. And I get it now, and that's why this didn't click with you. So that was very interesting. And I did a lot of, let's get into DM self-esteem, so put some reflecting. And I was curious about your reflection afterwards, Chuck, like how you felt. And you're like, oh shit, did I run it bad? Did I run it poorly? Is it me? Is that the reason why this game failed? So yeah, we went back and forth, and we talked for 2 hours post game, and then we went back and forth the next day over Discord for like another hour or two. And at the end of the day, it came down to it just wasn't for them, and that's fine. Not every game is, but it definitely I doubted myself and the game I ran for them. Yeah, which was played into it. I'm curious if that happened to you as well.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely try to learn from every session I run, because every session I run, there's always something like, I could have done this better, I could have done that better. In DCC, I think the culture clash difference of how DCC is ran versus like 5th edition, 4th edition, I think that played into a lot of it. There was a lot of stuff that I could have done better as far as managing how the players were handling their characters, because it's I don't know. Yeah, there's always, if someone says I didn't like this game, it's like, did I fuck this up?
Yeah.
Or is it the system? And a lot of thinking, like, at first I'm like, well, I must have not ran it right. But no, I think it was the system. Yeah. There's always room for us as DMs and GMs and judges to improve,
yes,
and do
100%.
things better. Like,
always learning and picking up new things and adapting, changing, and evolving. 100% agree.
Yeah. But so yeah, there was definitely reflection. There was definitely like, I could have done this better. But in general, that would have happened with any game I would have played. We could have been playing 5th edition in the similar situation, and I could have walked away with, I could have done that better. So yeah, it was definitely, I think it really did come down to the system just may not be for that player, at least the level funnel 0 aspect. So in agreement, yeah, like maybe the system, maybe that aspect of the gameplay just isn't for you.
Bert, you've run hundreds of games, thousands of games. I don't know. Have you encountered this as well, where a game just hasn't clicked with the players, and have kind of go like, what happened? You do a post-mortem, like, did I do something wrong? Just didn't click with them? You're muted, Bert.
This happened a lot early on, early in my GMing career, especially when I ran canned modules, right? And trying to run it rules as written, module verbatim as it was, including if it had fluff text, reading out the fluff text. Once I got over all of that, that has rarely happened at my table in the last 20 years. The reasoning behind this is, one, I have come to the realization that you cannot run a canned module as is. You can't. There are always errors, there's always problems, and you got to know your table. Yeah. So one of the game designers I highly admire writes a lot of adventures for what is this? This is called the Trail of Cthulhu, the Gumshoe system, right?
Okay, yeah.
So they do a lot of investigative games. Okay, here's the thing. My core group is an investigative group. We run mysteries. We've been doing this for a decade. And looking at his module, I'm like, my characters would tear this apart in the first 10 minutes. There's so much missing. It's like, okay, so they arrive on the scene, this carnage happened here, go. It's like, well, the author hasn't detailed that there's cars in the parking lot. This place is in the middle of nowhere. How did they get here? First problem, the author gave no indication of how they got there. Second issue, like they had lockers where clothing was, yet the author didn't feel like detailing that any of the clothing had IDs, which would be the way to figure out who these people were. It's like, obviously they didn't walk here nude, so where's their stuff? You know? And so little things that a game designer may not think of because they're looking at their overarching plot and their adventure, and they're leaving out these small things. But if your table is used to picking apart the small things, it better be there. Otherwise, as a GM, you're improving your butt off.
Oh yeah, that's super.
Put
That's
that
a future
information in where it wasn't
subject.
Exactly. And so years ago, I decided, here's how I run an adventure. I have the outline of what's supposed to happen. I write down pertinent information on 3x5 index cards and go. I do not follow the script as out. And I do it for my table. Like if I know my table going in, I know who's going to be playing, I know their personalities, I know what they're looking for in a game, I tailor the adventure.
So a perfect example of what you just went through was, or discussed there, was Solar Blades. You guys ripped that thing apart. And I had to roll with it. And because I know what that Sunday group's like, and that you've joined recently. And yeah, they'll pick it apart, and if it's not there, like you better be ready. You better have an answer, right? So I do a similar thing where I know the scenario and I know the block of the important information that's there, and then being able to use it or adapt or add more is important. Because yes, so many pre-written quests or campaigns or whatever adventures, you better be ready, because you never know what those players are going to do, because you can't run it verbatim. I agree.
And so when I gave up being slavish to how the module's written, that problem really went away. Now, as far as game systems that fell flat, I'm honestly of the camp that if you have a good GM, game's going to be fun. Just period. It's going to be fun. Now, we have had several game systems at the end of it where like, yeah, that was fun. Never playing that system again. But we had fun while we were doing it.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask you. Have you had a game where you, as the GM or DM or whatever you want to call it, the game, it wasn't for you, and you walked away, or you wanted to walk away?
Yeah. Okay. Early days of White Wolf system, the storyteller system.
Vampire. Yeah.
Right. So my education, I was an engineer. I'm all about the numbers, the math, and how things work out. That system blew chunks. It made no sense as far as at certain times you're either increasing the difficulty or you're minusing dice, and it doesn't tell you which way to go, which way to use it. But the swinginess of what it's actually doing to your percent of chance is huge. The math didn't work in that system. It just didn't. And that drove me to tears, because this was during the time when Vampire was all the rage. Everyone wanted to play it. So I ran it, but I hated it. I hated running it.
Did you keep running it, or did you walk away?
No, I kept running it. Honestly, I did. And what we ended up doing was where the rules just didn't meet the ground to my satisfaction, I would usually either hand wave it and make it all about the role playing at that point, right? To say, roll some dice. Just roll some dice. All right, that looks good. And again, that's where the ad-libbing started in, and where the, just adapting to the moment happened. Because the people were at the table to play the World of Darkness setting. I mean, that's what it was about. It was about the setting. It really wasn't about the rules. And so, once I got over that, okay, fine. We don't really need the rules, do we? We'll just keep going. Let's make a story out of this.
That happened to me recently with Simba Room, which you were playing in, and it just didn't click with me. And it's a bad game. It's not that there's anything wrong with the rules. It didn't click with me. and I know a lot of the players, and I don't think it clicked with you either, if I remember correctly. But I know a lot of the other players wanted to keep playing it. They're like, let's keep playing Subaru. And now I have this reputation with some of them that I hate it, and I don't hate it. It didn't click with me, and I might revisit it again down the road and try it again. But at that point in time, for me, at that month and that day that we played it, or the 2 sessions we did, it didn't click, and I couldn't keep going with it because of that, and I had to walk away, and we started something else.
And then the last criteria would be when the game doesn't fit the setting. And this happens a lot when you're looking at universal games like Savage Worlds, GURPS, etc. Great, solid system, but sometimes the system makes the game. The system makes the world, and that's come up more often than not.
I agree with that. I tried running a superheroes game in Savage Worlds, and it did not work. That system is not built for high-powered superhero characters. For pulp and like low-level street-level characters, fantastic. Oh, it excels at that. But as soon as you have like Superman and Flash and Hulk and all that running around,
no, I agree. And I think the best time at the table is when the rules agree with the setting, and the expectation of the players and the GM are together. It just kind of sings. And honestly, it doesn't have to be about it being the best system. It's just like at that time, at that table, that was the best.
Yeah. Have you had a game that's fallen flat for you, Chuck?
As
a GM?
In all honesty, like I don't have anywhere near the experience in different game systems that you guys have. My game experience, like 4th edition, 5th edition, Pathfinder. Now I've got some 3.5, some Zweihander, some Delta Green, Dungeon Crawl Classics. Like we haven't adventured much in different game systems. Now I'm definitely getting to that point where I want to adventure into different game systems to see how it's going. But to answer the question, has there been a game system that just fell flat with me? And this is going to be a real fun answer. Yes, it's 4th edition.
And you're going to run that for us.
I'm going to run you for it. I enjoy aspects of 4th edition. My complaint about 4th edition is combat. I absolutely just wither and die in prolonged combat. And that is 4th edition.
That's the game.
Yeah, so definitely, when I ran 4th edition for my group, and it was actually a play test for you guys for when I run it for you guys here in July, so I could kind of get everything written out. And but yeah, I ran the combat by the rules as the book intended, and the short combats, like 1 or 2 bad guys, okay, that was fine. But when we got into like the full tactical combat at 4th edition, I just hate it. It's the mechanics are fine. It's so tedious. It's so drawn out.
And there are games like this where they are much better rendered as like a video game.
Yeah.
Than at the table, so that the computer does all the math, everything in the background. Click a button, you're done, and it's fast.
Yeah. 4th edition, I stopped playing 4th edition the first time because of the combat. Coming back to it again with more experienced players, the combat was a lot better. But once we got it, like I said, the big combat 4th edition, it falls flat for me. I don't like it. But I don't know. At the same token, is it 4th edition's fault, or is that just me?
Did you try the 4th edition came out with it, like there was a 4.5. They released the Essentials.
Yep.
It streamlined everything. Did you like the Essentials better?
I never played the Essentials. We bought the 4th edition books, and that's what we played until we moved on to the D&D Next, the 5th edition playtest, and then into Pathfinder. So I knew about Essentials. I knew what it did, just streamlining, simplification, but we never played it at the table.
Yeah.
That's kind of like how I felt about Rollmaster back in the day. I loved me some Rollmaster, but the complexity of prolonged combat is one of those where let's just computerize all this. Let's just enter everything in, hit a button, and just tell us what the results are.
Well, that's the beauty of the virtual tabletops now. So when we did Against the Dark Master, one of my players, Wes, wrote a character sheet for us and had all the tables in it. So it did it for you, which was
I'm loving that.
so nice for me. Wes has gone on to build, so he'll release that as the official sheet once it's ready. He's worked for Daniel now and built the brand new sheet for Zweihander that's in Roll20 that we used, and he's releasing this week the sheet for Aliens. He wrote that one.
Oh,
It's nice to have someone in your group who can write character sheets for Roll20 for you if you want to run weird games that don't have character sheets already.
that's pretty cool.
So yes, that helped a lot with talking about Rollmaster, because Against the Dark Master is a I don't know, retro clone, you want to say, of MERP and Rollmaster.
That was college days. That was one of my longest running games. Loved it to death. And again, a bunch of engineers playing role-playing games. Rollmaster was right up our alleys.
Yeah,
It did get tedious with large combats.
it's a different type of game, and people love it. There's a huge audience for it out there, and there's new people discovering that game also. Like one of our guys, GN, who plays with us, just found Rollmaster, and he's just in love. I mean, he also loves Hackmaster. Like he likes those games that are just crunch and tables.
He should look for Rollmaster Express. Yeah, it gave you the full system, but in bite-sized bits and pieces. Wonderful introduction to Rollmaster.
Interesting. I'm making note of that for him. He'll be very happy to hear that. So, fellas, do you think we've broached this subject enough?
Yeah, well, we've all talked about systems that have failed flat. Maybe I guess the answer is, what do we do when a system falls flat for the table, or they don't like it? I guess my simplest answer is just move on, right?
I think yes, and I think it's important to find out why it fell flat, so it doesn't happen again, right? If they don't like XYZ, like how I found from these guys, they were really into their characters. Also, they built their characters and they were really attached, kind of like they got attached. Your guys got attached to the funnel characters. They were really attached to their characters. So when it died that early on, it was devastating to this one player, and they also didn't like the no hand holding. So now I know if I run something for them, they do need those breadcrumbs, not necessarily rails, but they need those breadcrumbs.
Right.
They don't here's a world, do whatever you want. Like it's going to keep going with or without you. You don't matter in this world at the end of the day. And I know that's not the game for them. So yeah, I think it's important moving on, but finding out what didn't work so you don't repeat it again.
Yeah.
Knowing your table is a big deal with that. Knowing your table.
Yeah. Sit down, have that conversation. Don't get your feelings hurt because they didn't have fun. Find out why they don't have fun, and then move from there. Yeah.
Agreed. Always learning as a GM. Always evolving. So we have two other subjects that weren't put forward by us. Do we want to discuss them, or do we just want to jump into something else? Because we're good at just talking about things. We had a full-on show before we went live. We talked about 3 or 4 subjects.
Well, we do. I think we should set on Khalil's topics because I think he has the most active experience. Well, Bert, you had some suggestions that you threw out there for future topics. Do you, off the top of your head, remember? Oh, I've got my spreadsheet right here.
Look at this guy. It's like we're prepared or something.
Yeah. So some of the things, if you guys, any of these topics strike home for conversation tonight, does system matter? How much prep? Improv versus script, and industry jobs.
Do you want to talk about prep?
I
like
think
talking about prep.
I can talk about prep. I think we've got a wide variety between the three of us on where we land out on the prep spectrum.
Bert, you've already touched on it, but this is your subject. So why don't you go ahead and kick us off on prep as a subject, as GMs?
it's a wide gamut. You've got GMs that will spend days, if not weeks, for every minute detail, hair color, eye color of every PC that a player might run into, names of family members going back X generations, on one end. And then on the other end, you've got the completely, hey, games in 5 minutes. Here's some ideas I want to throw in. Okay, that's your extremes, right?
Yeah.
And I have, over my time as being a GM, done from one to the other. I've gone the full spectrum. And this actually broaches into one of the other topics about I like to call it imposter syndrome, but someone asked about as a GM, keeping from feeling like you're doing an awful job, or how do you know when you're doing a good job, that sort of thing. And so at the start, I prepped weeks, months for a game, because I wanted to be able to tell a person when they say, oh, what's this guy's name? I could tell you his age, color of hair, style of wardrobe, children, everything. And I thought that I was a failure as a GM if I didn't know that, if it wasn't somewhere. Skip to present, and I make it up on the fly. It's like, yeah, those were always in my notes. Sure they were. Yeah. And to keep it consistent, and that's the largest difference between those two polls, right? Is all the prep you do on the one poll, you can make a very consistent experience, right? Nothing changes. You don't forget a name. You don't forget something that happened, because you've got it all there in your notes. On the opposite extreme, when you're going completely off the cuff, since you're doing that, it is hard to have a consistent experience, because the name might be forgotten. You might have said something offhand that someone in the party took to be important, but you didn't think it was. Thankfully now, I record all my sessions, whether or not I put them out for players or not. And I do review those before the next session, so that I can pull out things that I forgot I said, or that someone brought up. And so that helps me to give my players a consistent experience, even though I'm playing completely off the cuff.
Yeah. Chuck?
Well, yeah, I've, once again, I don't have the experience that you two have, but I have gone from, well, when we first started playing 4th edition, I didn't know what the hell we were doing. So I don't count that a lot, but yeah, I went from, it was great one time for a couple campaigns back. I had one player like, oh, I need to know about this for my family. And I made him like a 5 or 6 generation family tree. And it was impressive, I guess. And then they got the one piece of information, and then they set it aside and they never looked at it again. And that's kind of when it clicked. Like, I could have just pulled a name out of my ass, and as long as I remembered that name, it would have been great. Back in our last 5th edition campaign, I did kind of what how Bert describes. I would do a skeleton. Here's a skeleton of where I think the plot needs to go. Here's the important tidbits. And then I kind of just let the players, put meat on the bones. And the most extensive part of my prep work was always note taking. I don't know if you guys know this. I have a lot of hobbies that, my grandfather might have enjoyed. I smoke a pipe, I drink shitty whiskey, and I love fountain pens. So the biggest part of my prep work was always, run a game Friday, spend Saturday and Sunday just going through my memory and taking, 5 or 6 pages worth of notes, and just recapping everything, committing it to memory. So that way I would have, like Bert said, what name was that person ran through? Right. Right now my prep work is a lot higher than it was, because I moved from out of my old campaign into 4th edition, so I had to relearn how to play that. Then we moved into Dungeon Crawl Classic, so learning that game. And then we're getting ready to move into Zweihander, so learning that game. So my prep is higher now than it has been, but generally, yeah. Right. Populate make bones and then let the players slap the meat on that shit.
Yeah.
Nice, easy way, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I've similar to Bert, I've evolved over time. You take those tests at work, those Myers-Briggs tests, you find out your personality, this and that. So I'm a very detail-oriented person. I need to know everything before making a decision. And my prep used to be like that. My prep was like, I need to know everything inside and out. If the player asks me a question, I don't know the answer. Oh my God, that's it. It's gonna be a terrible session. I need to know everything. I need to have battle maps made for every single situation that may come up, just in case. I need to have branching systems and paths based off which way the players might go. And I don't know when it clicked, but I went more in the direction of the lazy dungeon master, where it's like, and I got the book here. I grabbed it off my bookshelf.
That's
so
a
I was
great
doing
book.
this before I read the book, but this book is fantastic.
Great book, yes.
Get this book, because I was doing a lot of things in it before reading it, so it validated. I was like, oh, okay, what I'm doing is all right. But for prep now, what I do is, so on the channel, I do run a lot of modules, but I know my players, and I know what type of game they play, what direction they'll probably take it. Similar to Bert, like those Sunday guys, Bert, are similar to your group. They're very heavily investigative, and they don't care for a lot of combat. They want to play the game. So knowing that, in my prep, what I'll do is if I'm running a module, I'll read the whole thing from beginning to end before running it. Then the week of the session, I will go in there and I will read what I know we're going to get to that week, plus a bit more. And then know that piece of the quest really, really, really well in and out, just reading it once or twice throughout the week. In my mind, preparing for any deviations that I anticipate they'll go through, but not doing any actual physical prep, just mentally, just thinking through it through the week. So when it comes up. And what I'll also do is I will take, when I'm starting a new game or a new session or this or that, I'll find pictures online of generic people, aliens, whatever I'm running. I will throw a name in there, and I will have just a database of NPCs that I can call on. If you're like, hey, I talked to this guy, I want to go walk to the store, what does that guy look like? I can click on a picture, bring it up. His name is Maxwell Jacobson, and he looks like this and this and that. And I've started doing that for NPCs as well, because then I'll have a record of it in my game and also have an image. It looks like a prep, really not. But I didn't anticipate it, but it's there, and it's that illusion. But yeah, knowing what I'm doing that week really, really well instead of the overall picture. I know the overall picture, but I'm not rereading it every time. Just anticipating what we're going to get to and then some, in case we go a little bit further. And that's really what my prep looks like these days, is thinking what you guys are going to be doing, anticipating what you're going to be doing. Oh, there we go. Oak's in here. Throw more curveballs is what you're saying. Noted and challenge accepted. All right, Oak. Just remember, your character's next. You do have a bounty on your head for one of your characters.
Oh.
Don't you forget it.
To add just a little something on for people that would like to try the more improv route, and in a tool that I use pretty heavily, it's still improv, but in a way it's not. So like if I'm playing in a campaign world that I'm creating, through the week I'll think about that world. I'll dwell in it some and think, hey, would this thing exist there? What would it look like? I think of scenes like, catching a cab might be an everyday occurrence. Well, I'll think about a scene that might play with a cabbie, and I'll think about what that cabbie's personality might be like. I just spend some time with the world, just thinking about everyday occurrences. And if something like, hey, that would be a fun thing, maybe I'll jot it down in a notebook. And so people that have played with me for a long time might recognize some of these scenes that have been played out in different games, like that wild cabbie. It just pops up in Call of Cthulhu, it pops up in Delta Green, may even pop up in a Starfinder game or something as slightly different. And so just jotting down ideas for scenes and then finding a way to weave it into, at this point, improv, but not really, because you have given it some thought.
Yeah.
But you're working it in where it would make sense to work in. So you have done some pre-thought, you have done some design. It's just a matter of, when is the moment that I can work this scene in that it would be fun? And then on the other side of the table, your player's like, oh, wow, that was clever. That was thought out. He did a lot of work. It's giving the illusion that you are when you may not necessarily be.
Fake it till you make it.
Right. One of the best tactics I have is if there's something I don't know and I need to look it up, or even if I just don't know it, it's in my notes somewhere. Let me look it up. And that gives you pretend you're looking through your notes. It gives you time to, spawn it out of your ass, or, whatever you do, just pretend like you had it written down and you just forgot it and you couldn't write it down at that moment. And
Right.
It goes a long way for, he does have all this planned out. It looks really great. It's just keeping up that appearance, that you at least know what you're doing.
I think it's
And I think it's important. I think that appearance is important, that your table believes that you know where the story is going,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
every nuance, because it gives them, it's almost like a safety net.
Yeah.
That there are laws to this universe when really it's just a chaotic clown laughing at them.
Right.
I think there's one more tool I wanted to mention. I think unfortunately it's out of print, but I think you can buy it digitally on DriveThru RPG, and it's something that I will break out from time to time. But it's a book called Masks: 1,000 Memorable NPCs for Any Role-Playing Game, and that is a good book. You can just like flip to any page. You'll get a little write-up of a personality, a description, a character quirk that you just use it. You read it off, and you've got like a livable, breathable character that NPC that you're throwing out there, and it breaks it down by fantasy, sci-fi, modern. It's all in there. Traits, tools, name generators. It is a fantastic book. I only have a PDF, unfortunately. I'd love to get a physical copy, but they sell for like $80.
Oh damn!
I tell you, just going to a baby name generator site where you're able
I
to
have
nationality, and then just print off reams of names and just have them near you. So if you need a name, cross it off the list that you've used that name.
I've learned to have random name generators up when we play games.
I think Xanathar's Guide, one of the last D&D non-adventure books, it's got something that I reference a lot, in the fact that it's just got random name tables for the different races in the Forgotten Realms world.
Different regions.
Yeah.
Breaks it down by, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Icelandic, Germanic. Like, it actually has like real European provinces, or whatever you want to call them, countries, and gives you names based off those. Those are great tables also. I agree.
Yeah.
And read a good book on improv. There are several out there. Someone, I think it is the Evil Hat people, just released an improv book specifically for role playing, and they're great. And they're great at giving you tips on how to read your audience, in this case your players, to kind of get promptings on where maybe you should be going next. In asking players, instead of telling them what happened, asking them what happened. Yeah. Like, one of my favorite tropes that I will do in a game is say, I'll start a game off saying, you're in a diner, you just walked in, you've got a bullet hole in your left leg. How'd you get that bullet hole? Why are you here?
Mm-hmm.
And let them, and then start the improv that way.
Yeah. Not to that specific, but that's definitely something that I employ a lot, is I just ask my players what happened. Like, we'll finish up a game and it's, what did you guys like? Tell me what you think happened in the game. And because a lot of the times the story that I think I'm telling isn't the story they're playing in. So it's really, going to your players is really nice, because they'll tell me like what's important to the game. Like, things I think are good don't count, or don't matter, at least is not. So yeah, go ahead.
You're correct. I find the most important thing for learning that is asking them to do the prep from the week before, because they'll tell you exactly what was important to them and what they latched onto, what they remembered. And then you need to take that and you need to run with it, because everything else that you thought was like brilliant, and you planted the seed and you're like, oh yeah, this would be great, they forgot completely about, and it does not matter to them.
Yeah.
I start every session off with a recap, and I ask each player to tell me something that happened last episode, and that gives you a good idea as to what they personally felt was interesting.
Mm-hmm. And important to them. Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
What is going on? Paizo? Sorry, I'm just looking at chat here. Just trying to chat like, why is the Paizo logo in there?
That's a question right there. I don't know. But yeah, no, definitely that player recap, that really shows you where your focus needs to go.
Yeah. It's important to also then check your ego, because if you had something prepped and you thought was brilliant, you got to learn to walk away, or learn to integrate it again in a different way. If you want to try to reintroduce it and see if it falls flat again, then maybe just leave it alone. You don't need to completely abandon it. But the way you approached it previously obviously did not click with the PCs.
Right. Yeah.
A writer's tip: being ready to kill your darlings.
Yeah.
Something that you thought was clever, you thought that would be great, but it's just not hitting the audience. Just be prepared to kill it and just leave it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. One trick that I am guilty of employing is if there are plot items that are important that I'm worried that the players won't pick up, is I stick a magic item with it. And it's dirty and it's not great for me mathematically. But if there's world building lore that might come in later, like, okay, here's this mini lore dump. Always make the players read it, but I stick in like, oh, and also you found it in a crypt. Here's this cool sword. I don't know. I was going somewhere with that.
That's okay.
That's how I operate.
It's all right. It's late. You're full of whiskey.
That is true.
It's good. It's bound to happen.
Yeah. Once you guys get to play a game with me, you'll realize that's how I operate, is just uncontrolled chaos. You think I say something clever, and it's just, I just pulled something stupid out of my ass, and it happened to be good for once.
There you go. I'm looking forward to playing in your game. I've enjoyed being a player in all these different DM's games. I've taken bits and pieces now from everybody. I've learned something, and I've added it to my repertoire and bag of tricks. And I'm also loving like Delta Green.
It's been really fun. Yeah.
We're gonna have a lull week though, since Matt there just got something better than gaming to do.
Decided to take vacation.
How
dare I?
I am thrilled to let you take all the heat for that, but honestly, next Saturday I've got a wedding to attend as well, so I couldn't have made it either.
I'll take the heat. It's fine. I'll take one for the team, Chuck.
There we go. That's good.
Okay, so prep. I think it's safe to say that we all use some similar methods, but we all also do things a little bit differently. I think it also depends on the medium that you're using. Like, I'm on virtual tabletop. Chuck, you're in person. Bert, do you use virtual tabletop for all of your podcasts, or do you just theater mind in a little bit of, or not at all?
I would give up a lot to have a live group. That it's been a good 20 years since I've had a live group of people. It's all been on the internet recently. Although, like Chuck, I do have a penchant for fountain pens. So what prep I do is usually actually in a notebook, spiral bound notebook. And then I'll take notes in a nifty little product. It's, let me look up what it's called here, because I would like to give a shout out. It is kind of nice. Called Campaign Logger. It's web-based. It just lets you put tags on words, descriptions, items, whatever you'd like. And there's predefined tags. So you can say like NPC, you can say PC, you can say like money, experience, etc. And it just logs everything for you. And I usually have that screen open while I'm GMing, and so I'm keeping my notes there, and I'll go back and listen again in case I missed something. But that's the extent of my digital use. Roll20 is been the de facto. I used to use Fantasy Grounds all the time, but I have a problem with my ISP, and I can no longer connect. Players can't connect to me, and it's nothing I can do on my end. So I'm jazzed about this new version of Fantasy Grounds that will fix that.
That's Well, Chuck, have you used both?
I've only used Roll20.
Okay. Maybe we'll save that for. I don't know if anybody else has used both. Maybe we're the only ones. I was gonna say that'd be a good subject too. The various virtual tabletops, but we'll write that down. The plot. Everybody asks me which one's better, and there's no clear answer. We can get into that as a future subject. I'm writing down VTTs.
It's a tool, It's whatever tool fits what you need.
I will definitely say that enlisting a virtual tabletop does usually increase the prep work I need to do. Because
go on.
Well, usually when I do, like I said, I do everything in a notebook. I've got my nice little, lectern notebook, or however you pronounce it. I do all my note taking in there, and then I go through and I do all my preps. I got my maps in there, everything in one book that I can sit there at the table and read. Then when it comes time for a virtual tabletop, I have to recreate whatever map I draw, because I don't do much module stuff.
Okay. Do you share those pictures? You just share your notebook with your players then when you get to that section to show them something?
When we're playing in person, generally it's all theater of mind. And one thing I've really encouraged of my players, and I'm really happy they took into it, is they'll pick someone to do the map taking if they're in a large dungeon. So a player is sitting down with graph paper and a pencil as I'm describing things and drawing it out for their map. But generally, no, they don't see my maps. But once we're on virtual tabletop, then we're sharing the maps. 4th edition maps were really important. So what we actually did is we set up a big TV right next to me off camera. And then I had it hooked up to Roll20, so all the players were sitting down we were playing virtual and in person at the same time.
Right.
So they were controlling their characters on Roll20, while I had the big map next to me on Roll20, so those without laptops could see it. And it's also what we captured to kick out to the stream.
You streamers, you can be very visual. Doing a podcast in an audio medium, I try my best not to have visual things to give my players, because then the audience is missing out.
Yeah.
Well, in general, I am of the same note. 4th edition was a big change for us, because it was 4th edition. You really need to have that map for the combat to work. They need to see positioning and placement. But generally, for the stream, I want people to be able to listen to it without seeing what's going on screen. So it's very much, you go down a corridor, you see this, you describe everything, and viewing a map isn't as important, and I try to keep that at the table. So that's why in-person play without having to use a virtual tabletop, my prep work's so much lower. I don't have to make a map that's for their consumption.
Interesting. See, and I figure I take it that my prep is super low using a virtual tabletop. I'll just grab a couple of random images off the internet. I will make a map if I know or think combat will take place, and I usually will make one map a week. And I use a program, Dungeon Painter Studio, and I'll spend maybe 30 minutes making a map. I used to go crazy. I need to have every detail and this and that, and little scratches and dirt and dust. And I'm like, as long as it gets the general idea across, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
But that's it for my prep. But interesting what you guys are saying with audio only, Bert, with podcasts. I've thought about taking my sessions and putting them on podcasts, but it doesn't translate well because we are so visually dependent. I'll be like, hey, you turn a corner, you see this, and I'll click a button and it'll appear for them, and I don't describe it because I see it. They go, oh, right. And if you're listening, you're like, well, what did they see? I don't get it, right? Or if you have a map, you bring up a map, and we're not describing everything because the viewers and the players have a visual.
Right.
I'd have to change the way I run my games, so I've thought about that as well. But I don't know. Yeah, I've never really thought that I'd do more prep doing it on a virtual tabletop. I always find I get away doing less prep because I can just copy and paste images off the internet. Use other people's things, right?
Well, and it may be fairness. Maybe that's just the difference in, the background for you and I guess. I'm used to doing everything in person we gotta, if I need to show the players a map or something like that, I've just got a piece of paper. I'll scribble it down and hold it up and shake at them. Doing the virtual tabletop, I guess it's another step for me outside of my normal prep work. Maybe I should have put it like that.
No, that's fair. Honestly, the most prep I've done for a game in a very long time was that thing I made for Bitter Harvest that had all of the players of the mystery. I made it out because I know there was a lot of moving parts and things to keep track for the players the first time I ran it. So I thought as well, because I could tell you guys were forgetting some of the names and this and that. So I was like, I'm using clip art. Or I'm using images off the internet, just copy and paste them on here, draw little lines, and that's honestly the most prep I've done for a game in a long time. Like sitting there solid, because it would take me maybe 45 minutes to an hour to do that the first time, plot it out and build it. But interesting. I find that very interesting.
Yeah.
In person versus virtually.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I guess it's the background we come from, I guess. Maybe. Yeah.
I have dreams of having a live group where I can mic everybody and have a little sound board set up again. And I think where I live, that's not likely to happen anymore. But I do yearn for those days.
What Chuck's got going on?
Yeah.
We used to have like a potluck before the game. Took an hour before we started playing. Everybody brings some food. We just socialize, have some food, then we sit down and play a couple hours.
Yeah. Our group, we've evolved over the years. It used to be getting together and hanging out was the priority, and role playing was not. So we would spend 5-6 hours together and get maybe 30 minutes of gameplay done. And then as we got more and more into it, those numbers switched around. We would do that. We would meet up for dinner, head to, sit down in my front room and play some D&D together. Everyone had little TV trays for rolling their dice. And so it's definitely, it's actually the beginning of June was our 1-year anniversary for streaming.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And it's still taking what we do for fun as a hobby and putting that out there for others to consume. It's still something we're struggling with, because what we would always do is we would order pizza. And if you see that in my game a lot, like halfway through the stream, all of a sudden everyone's got pizza in their face. And so now it's kind of trying to edge people towards like, maybe you should just eat that on break, because no one wants to hear you slurping down.
Yes.
So yeah.
True. That's true. Cool. So prep
work.
We all do it differently. And there's no right way.
There's absolutely not. The big takeaway is to check out that Lazy Dungeon Master book.
Yes.
That is.
Yeah.
I love this book. It is so good. It is so worth money. And if you do buy a physical copy, I'll throw it up here. It is like full color, beautiful illustrations. This thing, it's gorgeous. And this is the second edition. The first one was, I think, geared more towards Pathfinder, and this one is 5e, but also generic in its writing. So don't worry if you run a certain type of game. It's only going to appeal to that.
The prep work is pretty universal in it.
Gorgeous book, and just full of useful information. Back to the Kickstarter. Do not regret it.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we move on to our third and final Fuzzy Fungeon Master instead?
What is...
Okay. Do we want to go to our last subject of the night? And if we do, what do we want to talk about? Or do we have questions from the stream?
We do need to address something that's happening in the stream. As you see, Velan is watching Jake. He does our fake sponsorship, so we can plug our real sponsorship.
Gotcha.
And he's got one there. So if you would humor me for a second, I'm going to read his
please do.
His fake sponsorship. All right. I don't have Jake's voice, so we're gonna go with it though. This program is brought to you by Nail Knockin' Nerds, Sack of Hammers. Solve all your problems in the best and worst of ways. The Nail Knockin' Ned's Sack of Hammers. If you have, oh fuck, I'm giving up, Jake. I'm giving up, Jake. I'm walking.
This program is brought to you by Nail Knockin'
There you
Ned's
go.
Sack of Hammers. Solve all of your problems in the best and worst of ways. That's Nail Knockin' Ned's Sack of Hammers. If all you have is a hammer, you came unprepared. Okay, Jake,
See,
you failed there.
yeah. See,
You've come unprepared. Jake, you failed in that last bit. I'm sorry.
Jake does so good, and he's disappointed us tonight.
There we go. And your actual sponsor is...
Oh, Libris Arcana. If you're needing a great set of dice on a monthly or quarterly subscription, head over to LibrisArcana.com because we're in the States there, Matt, not in Canada. And use discount code Cobalt at checkout.
Yeah, but if you're in Canada, you have all kinds of crazy more options because they are a Canadian company. I signed up for a few months for their random supplement of the month, which was cool. I got some cool old supplement books from the 90s. It was like $10 a month. But yeah, very cool. Very cool company. I am also tied to them, sponsored by them. Someone just tweeted that they got my card out of a box and I haven't sent them cards in months. So that's cool that they're still throwing them out there.
That's very cool.
Libris Arcana. Use code JOWZAM for your discount.
JOWZAM, Cobalt. We're going to love you either way. Use them discount codes.
JOWZAM. And that's right. I said Z because I'm in Canada.
That's great.
All right. Winter sponsorship break. Last subject. So we rattled off a list of subjects.
Yeah.
Man, we've touched on some of these, I think, in our conversations.
We kind of have.
Thane approved. Yeah. Thane in Canada. That's a running joke on my channel, too, that there's a Thane in Canada that rules us. Don't ask.
Okay.
Don't ask.
That's fair.
Thane approved. Yeah. Do we have any questions in the chat? Does anybody want to ask us anything? North Montana.
Yeah, I haven't seen any questions come through.
No, I haven't either. Shadzar, is he normally in your chat or she? I shouldn't assume.
No, that's
welcome, Shadzar, and all of your Paizo-ness that you keep
throwing
out there.
If they are regularly in my chat, I've forgotten them, and that is my apologies.
Yeah, this guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
don't know what's going on here.
I just found somewhere to eat.
All right,
crackers.
we're having a GM chat. Welcome. This is the very first episode. That's why we're all over the place.
Right. Yeah, we don't know what we're doing yet. We'll figure it out. Does system matter and improv versus script? We've talked about improv some. Yeah.
Yeah, we touched on improv. I think we can bring it up again in the near future, and I think with more GMs here, I think would be a good thing. I think improv matters big time.
I would. Yeah, it really does. And I would be, Seth from the Monday nights. I would be thoroughly entertained to hear how much of the sessions he ran for us was improv versus not.
Yeah, me too.
Because he had some really wild stuff come up, and it was a lot of fun. And if he wrote it, I would say he's a mild form of genius. And if it was improv, then hats off to you, man. That was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
We'll have to talk about that when
those are up and available on Chuck's channel. I think I have them on my channel.
Mm-hmm.
They're good sessions. I did not enjoy D&D 3 as a game, but I loved Seth's sessions.
Absolutely.
They were fantastic.
And I think that's a good segue into the next topic. Does system matter?
I don't know. It's a loaded question. Bert, I'm going to throw it to you.
Yeah.
Does system matter? But you talked about it a little bit with White Wolf. So
yeah,
I think I actually am the one who put in that question because it gets asked a lot. It really does. It gets asked quite a bit. And as most things, it depends. Does system matter? Well, if your table is expecting to play Dungeons and Dragons and you put down Fatal, then yes, it matters. Well, I mean, yeah, there's that level of expectation, and also does the game fit the genre, which we talked about earlier as well. So, in my opinion, the system can matter. I don't think it always matters, but it can matter.
I don't think it should be the overall defining factor.
Urance, I don't know how to pronounce that in chat. Says it's fair.
Oak. It's Oak.
What's that?
It's his name's Oak.
Oak.
He's
okay, he's one of your people. Okay.
Yeah.
There
you go.
Very odd how mechanical systems can affect the feel of a setting story. Yeah.
But that also depends, though, because what if you're using Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds, where all of the mechanics is just a button click, so you're not even aware of the mechanics.
It's a macro.
It is no effect on the story.
Yeah, which happens a lot when I'm just like, "Hey guys, we're gonna play this game. Don't worry about learning the system. Just read these pages, because the character sheet will do the rest for you." That's a very good point, Bert. It's a very, very good point.
Yeah.
I think it matters most on the player's end, because if the players are expecting to play a specific game and that's not what you sit at the table with, then, it absolutely matters. Try pulling that crap off at a Gen Con, Matt, when you're supposed to be running Zweihander and you throw down something else.
Yeah. No pressure.
That is true. I guess it really comes down to a case of knowing your audience, though, doesn't it? Us sitting down in these GM groups we're playing here, we're having fun role-playing together, doing what we're doing, and system doesn't matter so much, but if definitely your players, system absolutely does matter, because Savage, that game wasn't fitting their needs.
Simba Room. That was my needs. Oh, Savage Worlds,
those players.
Superheroes. That was a mess. I think system does matter though. I'm looking at my shelf here, like 5e. I'm gonna say system matters there, guys.
Yeah.
It really depends on the game that you're playing.
Also, dig into that. So what about 5e matters that you couldn't do in BX or 3rd edition?
It's not necessarily the mechanics, but it's like the talents and the things that you gain as you level up. I think that's what matters to that game. I'm not saying that you couldn't do that in like BX or 3rd or Black Hack or White Hack or whatever you want. You could do it, but that game, it is integral to that game and the fun that people have in it.
Again, though, that's meeting the expectation. So I could do the same thing with any other level and skill-based system. I mean, really. So what is it about 5th edition that is different than, let's say, Chaosium's D100 system? It's level-based, you got percentage for skills, you can get all kinds of leveling up things, pretty much similar. So what about 5th edition would make you say, no, it must be done in 5th and I can't do it in Chaosium's home system?
I guess you could. That's a good point, Bert. I guess you could retool it to fit what is done in 5th. That's a good point.
I mean, it really,
you could do it.
It really comes down to maybe it's a setting is where system matters, right? Because I was sitting here while you were talking about it, I'm thinking, let's look at Zweihander versus 5th edition. Could you run because Zweihander, it has a very specific theme to it, a very specific setting and feel, and it's built into the mechanics of the game as you go through it. You could run a 5th edition game like Zweihander to a point. It would be stripping out a lot of the built-in mechanics for 5th edition. but you couldn't do it the other way. You couldn't run Zweihander through a 5th edition adventure because these systems are.
You're correct. The one thing I said to my guys is we'll never do a dungeon crawl in Zweihander because you're not going to make it past the second room.
Yeah.
It's not built for that. There's a lot of chat now going on around this.
There's so much chat going on.
I'm like watching
this is a hot button topic amongst a lot of people that play with systems.
Grimdark versus high fantasy.
You can have a system that is custom designed to play and to tell a specific kind of story. It's designed that way. And so with that type of story, it works wonders. But if you try and use it for something else, it doesn't work. And your example is Zweihander is spot on. You're not going to do a dungeon crawl with it. It's not what it was designed to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not to say you couldn't, but
you could.
Yeah, it would be a different experience. It would be a very different experience.
It's an interesting subject because I'm also thinking too, like, so we just did Solar Blades Cosmic Spells, which is so rules light, where there's no skills, it's just stats, right? And we're just rolling under on stats. And you could slot really almost anything you wanted into that because there were abilities and things that you have.
For skills, I would argue, because with the thief class or what passes for a thief, and for the other classes, but the thieves get more of them, you get to decide a profession or a tag every other level. Like I could say I was an acrobat, I'm a con man, and that tag gives me a bonus. That's really nothing more than saying you have a skill.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, touchy question.
It is a touchy question. Look at everybody's got their opinions on this one.
Because there are definitely games that are designed and only work with certain settings, and if you try and break it out of that, it just doesn't do it.
Yeah,
superhero games are a good example of that. Lots of generic systems work great for low power, medium power, but when you start to get up to superhero and like god tier powers, it breaks down completely.
I have
look at a system that's made for that kind of play, like Tiny Supers is a new one that's out,
which we're going to be playing soon on the channel.
There you go. Prowlers and Paragons just finished a Kickstarter for their new edition. I kind of like that one too. Designed from the ground up to tell this kind of story, and it works for this kind of story because the tropes are integral to the mechanics.
Yeah, but that's interesting. But take Powered by the Apocalypse, where you could run anything in there.
Yeah, see, I have an issue with that because if you take any PBTA game and compare it to another PBTA game, the only thing they have in common are 2d6 and the way the rules are laid out. Because every PBTA book has a different thing that they add to it to fit the genre. Rule, a new way to do a thing. So they are different games. They just happen to use a loose system that shares correspondence between them.
Okay, so then Fate
is a toolbox. It's not a game, it's a toolbox. No, seriously, my first game that we played in our podcast when we first started, of Steam Seal of Murder, where we got our name, we were actually part of the bleeding edge play test for the Dresden Files role-playing game. This was before it was out, before Fate. I think Spirit of the Century was out, but how it later became Fate Core and all that hadn't come out yet. So we were actually doing playtesting for that, and I made this world around that. When Fate Core came out, it is not a role-playing game. It is a toolbox to allow you to create a role-playing game. You pick and choose the mechanics you want. You pick and choose the power levels you want. You pick and choose specific mechanics you want. And now you have a game.
That sounds fair.
I've told you this in the past. Fate is a game that fell flat for me as a player, but I think it was because of the way it was run. So I'm anxious for you to run Fate for me, Bert, and show me that I'm wrong.
Fate is very much player-centric because players can have the power to change everything. This is also a great way for a GM to get into improving because you have to. You cannot go into a Fate game as a GM with a very tight schedule of occurrences and events that happen, because your players can throw it all out the window very easily. Now, having said that, there are, again, Fate Core is build your own role-playing game. You can pick rules that limit player agency so they can't mess up your plot as much.
Mm-hmm. It's fair. The game for me that really, really flexed and built those improv muscles was Star Wars when I ran that, because of those wacky dice. You can't prepare for what those dice are going to come up with though either.
Yeah, the
But
DC, yeah,
The
those-
Fantasy Flight one.
yeah.
Yeah.
that one.
When
Okay,
when you pass with a failure or whatever, or with this, or you fail with a success, you're like,
Yeah.
what does that look like? And I don't want to be lame, like, oh, you get like you take a point of damage, you take some stress. No. Let's make this happen. Let's have some play out, right?
Yeah.
Um,
We ran a game. We ran a campaign in that before, and it was a decently long campaign. And Jake was actually in it. Velan is watching in the chat. And it was a lot of mental gymnastics for me to fit those in, besides just mechanical. And then we dove into 5th edition for a real long time, and I got rusty on that, so we decided to run, the Fantasy Flight Star Wars game as a one-off one night, because we had a lot of people out, and I floundered and I died because those improv skills I had were, you failed, but you, like you said, you got an advantage to it. What the hell does that mean?
yeah.
Luckily, one crit was in the chat one night, sending me direct messages like, here's what happens in this situation. He bailed me out. But yeah, those are improv heavy dice right there.
Yeah, that game for sure.
just thought of another circumstance here where, as an example of where system needs to fit genre. You could not play. Are you guys familiar with Legend of the Five Rings? Rokugan, Fantasy?
Very basically, yeah.
You could not play that game, and they tried to do it. You cannot play that game with Dungeons and Dragons for a very simple reason. Dungeons and Dragons relies on you getting gold for experience. In Rokugan, you cannot touch a corpse.
Oh.
Dead things are verboten. You cannot touch dead things, which means you are not looting corpses. Because it's their society. It's their society structure. The lowest of the low in their hierarchy of people of importance are the ones that can touch dead things. If you're playing a character that belongs to a clan, except for a particular clan, you can't touch a dead thing. Therefore, no looting.
You can't loot.
Man. Yeah. That would be
the first thing that happens after combat. What's he got on him?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, that's a good way of pointing that. You 5th edition's a little closer, but it's that 5th edition. It's that Dungeons and Dragons mindset. Yeah, it's definitely loot the corpse. And if there's a game where you can't touch the corpse,
now they did make a D20 version of L5R. That was just one of the things that bothered me.
Yeah.
Culturally, you can't do this. So
yeah.
And now it's part of the FFG family with their dice.
And they did a good job with it. I like it.
That's what I hear. I hear it's fantastic. I would like to give it a try. Yeah, I don't know how. We're kind of at a stalemate here because we don't.
there's no clear defining answer. I mean, really, does system matter? It depends on setting. I think that's the answer.
Well, the rules reinforce the setting. I mean, again, I'm firmly of the belief that a great GM can make anyone have a good time at the table, but that doesn't mean you'll come back to the game. You'll say, hey, I had a great time playing at Matt's table for this game, but I hated the system, but I had a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is right on the nose there. Like Matt said earlier, we had a lot of fun when Seth ran that game, but I'm good not going back to 3.5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. System matters because if you want combat, you need to use a system that focuses on combat. I don't know though. Because Zweihander doesn't focus on combat, but it does combat very well.
Yeah.
If you wanted to go in that kind of game, but again, like if you do a dungeon crawl, you will die. But if you wanted that type of game, it is there. That's tough.
I think it's once again setting, and not necessarily like lore and history setting, but also thematic. Like, dungeon crawling is a setting, I guess you could put it at. So system matters to that.
That's a good point. Tabletop to keyboard, you gotta want a certain type of combat. That's a good point.
Oh yeah. There
Not a matter of wanting
was
a certain type of combat.
Yeah. There was a question that did come in chat while we were knee deep in that, and it was from Jake for my group. And it's, do DMs, GMs, how much do they borrow from like pop culture? I think that's what his question was.
I try not to, because I find that for me, if I'm a player, it takes me, I'm like, oh, you're talking about Back to the Future or something like that, right? And for me, it takes me out of it. And it came up when we were doing Forbidden Lands, Bert. I don't know if you're in those sessions, but I'm running a module was pre-written by Questing Beast, Ben Milton of Questing Beast fame here on YouTube. He's a reviewer. And I think one of the players mentioned, oh, this is Princess Mononoke, the anime. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I guess it relied heavily on a lot of references to that. And I don't normally run that type of game. I don't like using pulp culture references. I like to, if I do take something from pulp culture, I want to flip it. So if I use it, it's familiar enough, but you don't know, like, oh, you're using like it's Boba Fett. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
no, it's not. Pay no attention, man, behind the curtain.
Yeah.
That's a dangerous thing though, because I'm generally the oldest person in the game group that I run or play in. So my pulp culture deeply centered in the 80s and 90s. I know crap all past that. So if I'm dropping deep pulp culture references from the 80s, how many people at my table are going to get that?
Yeah. The specific question, how often does a GM straight up, oh man, my chat slid. How often does a GM straight up jack stuff from obscure media their players wouldn't notice? Comedy, NPCs, major plots, stuff like that.
90%. I read a lot, watch a lot. It inevitably will come out for me.
I mean, it's definitely what influences our story making. I don't know. I definitely do. I steal constantly. I don't say I borrow. I don't say I am influenced by. I steal stuff all the time. Our last campaign, a lot of the core themes, a lot of the core plot was based off of Michael Moorcock's Prince Coram books. And like even the main character that characters were getting lore dumps about, I just changed his first name, and that was it. So I guess to answer Jake's question, I do it all the time. So if he starts Google searching shit at the table as I describe it, he's going to be in trouble. He'll find the answers.
Yeah, I think it falls in your style, because I'm not a fan of it. I try not to.
Yeah.
If I do, it's going to be super obscure.
Yeah.
Because I don't
Exactly. It's going to be
call me out.
You gotta. It's another case of know your audience. My group, if I started pulling out plot beats from, like, I don't know, whatever the current popular anime is, or they're gonna tear it apart, and they're gonna know it, and it's not gonna be as fun for them because they'll see the direction it's going.
Then there's an expectation, right?
Yeah.
As soon as they pick up on what it is, they're like, well, I know where this is going, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, no, maybe I changed it.
You really gotta know your table. You gotta, more than knowing their gaming preferences, you kind of gotta know what their media consumption preferences are to a point where.
That's hard. That's hard if you're running virtually online, because
Okay.
I know my people to an extent, and I know some of them very well, and others I don't know at all.
Yeah.
I called animes cartoons couple weeks ago, and a couple people almost flew out of their chair when I did that. So
Yeah.
apparently I have a couple of anime fans in my group, and I did not know that. And calling it a cartoon is blasphemy to them.
Oh man! Oh wow! You hurt their feelings there. There's another question that came up: injecting Rick and Morty, D&D, Wizard of the Coast products, or Stranger Things, Wizard of the Coast products in our games. Do we do that?
No.
Not at all. We played the Stranger Things box set.
We did here on the channel.
Steven the DM ran it for us.
Yes, he did. I can't say that. Actually, I like to run. Zweihander's going to be. It's going to be some exercise for me in playing differently, because I like to play very tongue-in-cheek and comedic with things. And during the last campaign, I did have a character. I had two characters that were actually killed by Rick and Morty in game. And it wasn't supposed to go like that. I just threw it in as a tongue-in-cheek. Just here's a quick laugh, and then the players wouldn't let it go, and a couple of them were killed.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. If you like something, steal it, I guess.
Pop reference thing. I just thought of something that I do that on reflection, I guess would fit in this is often I'll introduce an NPC and I might say as played by X actor.
Yeah. So another channel here locally, and he's on YouTube, Dungeon Musings. Awesome. Amazing guy. Runs great games. He's currently running a ton of Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers. Kevin. He does that with all of his NPCs, and he runs on Roll20. He'll bring up an image of whoever, like, as played by Tom Hanks in this movie, and he'll bring up a picture. And I like that.
I do.
So you're not saying that it is that character, but for you as a player, you're like, right away. Okay, I know that person. I know what they were like in that movie. And I think that's a good tool. I need to start using that. That's a good point, Bert.
One thing that I do in all my games, and I'll make you guys do it when we get into 4th edition, it doesn't go for the NPCs, but it's to help characters get into the mindset of roleplay, is when they make their character, I make them tell me what actor would play that character and kind of what movie or what role it would be influenced by.
Okay.
And it's just I don't know. A lot of my players didn't come from real heavy roleplay backgrounds. So it's a nice way for them to think, what does this character look like? What is this character's mannerisms? How do they talk? So for making players do that to their characters, just kind of, I think it helps them role play a little more. I don't have to do that with Jake and some of the more advanced players, but it's, I don't know, following the same thing. It's definitely a thing that I do.
Mm-hmm. That's a good idea for people to get them out of their comfort zone as well. Yeah. Right. That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I'm gonna play David Carradine from Kung Fu: The Legend Continues.
There you go. One of Jake's last characters, he had a 6, it was, this actor playing that actor playing, Tom Hanks playing this character playing Gordon Ramsay playing Sean Connery, and it was a hoot. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know.
This is a good suggestion. How did we get to this from system versus game? What was it? What was the question, Bert? Where do we even start with this?
We were taking character. Does system matter? We got sidetracked with a couple chat questions. That's how we ended up here.
That's how we went down this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Pulp culture. Right.
Yeah. Pulp culture.
No.
And the system. Yeah. The core question, does system matter? Yeah.
Undetermined.
It's so situationally. Yeah.
We are coming up on the 2-hour mark. Do we want to call it a night here and a wrap on our first episode, gentlemen? Okay. Yeah, it's late for you. I don't know.
Hours, good time.
Bertson, but yeah. Okay, so how often are we doing this, guys? If people are wondering, when are we? Is this monthly?
I think the conversation is monthly right now.
Mm-hmm.
We intended to have some more voices on tonight.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah,
We will next
we're
time.
Scheduling. And that needs to be a topic. Scheduling problems.
Yes. That came up with you tonight. We'll write that down. So we're going to do this once a month. There's no set date or time right now. We have many other members within this group. There's 5 more people. They can't all make it on X night, and others can't make it on Y night. So we just said, hey, we're doing it tonight. This is the first episode. So next time we do it, we're probably going to have a lot more voices and faces here, which will be great.
Yeah.
So we have more perspectives. Not next Saturday, but the following Saturday, Bert, you will be running what for us here in this time spot?
Delta Green, our second play session.
Which is awesome. I'm having so much fun playing that game. I've wanted to play Delta Green forever. I've wanted to run it on my channel and play it.
This is my first encounter with Delta Green, and really the first game I've really played in that's not heavily set in a fantasy setting. And I am having way more fun than I would have imagined. So this has been a real pleasant run with Delta Green.
Yeah, I liked being the coked up homeless guy carrying $2,000 and picked up by the cops.
Who would have? Yeah.
It was good times. Go back, watch the stream. It's on Chuck's channel. He's got it. I think Bert's uploaded to his channel. But with that, why don't Bert tell everybody who you are, where they can find you, and what you currently have going on in your channel.
Sure, I'm Bert. Go by BizLab on most of the social media thingies. I run the Of Steam, Steel, and Murder podcast, which can be found at Of Steam, Steel, and Murder at simplecast.com, or you can just go to Blue Magic, BLUMAGIK.com. And as a shout out, my friend Mr. Beatty's Dark Trails RPG is finishing up his Kickstarter. 10 hours to go. I'm doing a lot of work on this little thing for him, and it'd be great if people can check it out.
Back it. I'm really looking forward to that game. I know Chuck is as well. We're both like, give us Dark Trails. Chuck, do you want to go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you?
Yes. Once again, I am Chuck of Defenders of Cobalt. If you're watching this live, you've already got the hard work done. You know where to go. If you're not watching this live, you can find me over at twitch.tv/Defenders of Cobalt. Just look for Defenders of Cobalt on Twitch. We also have a YouTube. We're not fancy enough to have a cool URL yet, so just do a search for Defenders of Cobalt. You'll find us there. And if you want to come talk with me on a regular basis, hit me up on Twitter at Cobalt Defenders. We do live play. It was just 5th edition, but we're branching out. So we got a lot to offer, and we're all hilarious idiots. So it's worth checking out.
Yes, it's good times.
Yeah.
And I am Matt, aka Jowzam at Jowzam's Den. We do live plays, actual plays of games, and then we bring on the designers and the creators afterwards, and we talk to them. It's good times. Right now, I am running Forbidden Lands every Friday. We've got Call of Cthulhu. We're doing Pulp Cthulhu, Masks of Nyarlathotep, the epic legendary adventure. We're running that every other Sunday, alternating with Solar Blades Cosmic Spells currently, and after that, Tiny Supers. I don't know. We have a copy coming from the publisher, so we're going to be running that right away. But yeah, that is, you can find me, Jowzam's Den on Twitch, Jowzam's Den on YouTube, and on Twitter. But we are a small fraction of Notorious DMG, a group of DMs, GMs, and lore masters running games for each other, talking about things that matter to us. And we'll be back. We'll be back in another month with another chat. So thank you so much, everybody who joined us. This was fun. And I think we did all right.
We did, It was entertaining. We'll definitely put that there.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night.